Hi, hello, and welcome to this episode of Geography Girl. Today we're stepping into 1920s France, which saw the flourishing of the final stage of the Baroque movement, which reached a fever pitch in the form of the Rococo. Rococo is a dramatic style of architecture, art and decoration which features curves, asymmetry, elaborate gilding, lots of white and pastel, and optical illusions to create surprise and drama. It's been described as perhaps the most rebellious of design styles. It originated in the early reign of Louis XV of France. It was a reaction and a rebellion against the formality and heaviness of the style of his predecessor. This style, the Louis XIV style, is also known as French classicism, which is a serious and imposing style. Typical of classicism, it favoured monumentalism, creating big civic buildings with facades of marble to glorify King Louis XIV and his reign. King Louis XIV, aka the Sun King, was famously quoted as saying, "I am the state," and was the epitome of an absolute monarchy in Europe. Major monuments included the Palace of Versailles, the Grand Trianon at Versailles, and the Church of Les Invalides. So we moved away from the Grand Manner towards Rococo, which was grandiose, ostentatious, and it found its debut in Paris, coinciding with the death of Louis XIV. His great-grandson and eventual predecessor, Louis XV, was only 5 years of age. With his uncle ruling in his place, royal proceedings became less intimate, less public, and overall less formal. This was a key factor in the emergence of the Rococo. Louis XV and his mistress, Madame de Pompadour, redecorated the Palace of Versailles in Rococo style, boosting its popularity across France. By the 1790s, the style had spread into Catholic neighbours like Germany and Austria, like the Weiskirche in Bavaria, which is one of the most famous examples of German Rococo style, showing white walls, carvings, and pastel-coloured decorations. It flourished in England between 1740 and 1770 in silver engravings of ornaments in the 1730s, with artists and craftspeople such as the Huguenot refugees from France playing a role in its spread. It spread into Italy, with Venice, Rome and Milan becoming important centres for the new style for furniture and decorative arts. Spain and Portugal adopted the style too, hybridising and becoming known as Spanish colonial style, which spread into North and South America. It even made its way to China and the East. Many traditional Eastern decorative motifs and techniques were adopted by the Rococo in Europe as chinoiserie. The final stage of the Baroque movement, Rococo shares a similar phonetic structure in how it got its namesake. Barocca comes from the Portuguese word barroco, or oddly shaped pearl. It is a term widely used since the 19th century to describe a period in art and music in Western Europe in 1600 to 1750, and was originally conceived by the Catholic Church with clear religious motivations. The music of Bach and Handel were considered barocca and described 19th century critics as sounding overly ornamental and exaggerated. Barocca expanded our horizons. It represents a time of interconnectedness across our very own oddly shaped pearl, with advancing technology and the invention of the telescope and philosophers like Descartes, Hobbes and Locke. Nations in Europe grew more involved with foreign trade and colonisation, bringing themselves into direct contact with other parts of the globe which are unfamiliar. Rococo, or the rocaille, describes rockwork, rubble or pebbles. It refers to the scrolling seashells and rock motifs that became popular following the trend of man-made grottos in pleasure gardens in the wealthy estates of the late 19th and early 18th century. Unlike Barocca, it was not motivated by politics or religion, and there was no specific meaning behind the decorations and paintings, except for their beauty and elegance. Therefore, the term Rococo was originally used by neoclassical artists to mock those who were gifted in playing with the frivolous artistic forms. Voltaire critiques the style, describing it as degenerate and superficial, and Jean Blondel, a great French architect, described the style to be a ridiculous jumble of shells, dragons, reeds, palm trees and other plants. Now let's get into the meat and bones and have a look at some scenes that are bringing with superficiality, vanity and frivolity. Painters like Honoré Fragonard, Antoine Watteau and François and Elizabeth Vigée-Lebrun and Boucher led the way. Paintings featured pastoral scenes, mythological subjects with themes of love. Boucher was loved by King Louis and his mistress and was a big fan of the Rococo. Boucher painted Madame de Pompadour a few times throughout the period, featuring nudity, pastels, shades of pink against a green and blue background. La Toilette de Venus includes winged cherubs, was quite feminine and celebrated the traditional woman persona, which was fashionable in the 18th century. One of the distinctive styles of the Rococo era was the fête galante, which was a French term which loosely means courtship party, which was used to describe the paintings of Antoine Watteau. These paintings were characterised by an outdoors composition, usually a picnic, with upper-class ladies and gentlemen flirting and conversating. One of the best examples is The Swing, a painting by Honor Fragonard. Painted in 1767, it features a woman in a lush, blooming garden with a billowing pink gown gliding through the air. She holds onto a pair of ropes tied around a knobbling tree. She kicks her legs into the air in a flirtatious and sensual act, leaning back with a man at her feet peering up at the open skirt of the woman. A heeled slipper flies from her foot, pointing towards the marble statue of Cupid, the mythological god of erotic love. He puts his index finger to his lips, and they reach with the opposite hand to remove an arrow from his quivers. There are some references to adultery and infidelity, the husband blissfully unaware of her hidden lover who is pushing the swing. There is a love triangle. The ropes of the husband is being used to pull his wife, resembles the bonds of marriage, and a set of reins, representing the restrictions placed on female sexuality in this period. There is a white yapping dog, which is a common symbol of infidelity, and is seen to be sounding the alarm, threatening to expose the infidelity. The woman makes a silencing gesture. Fragonard positions the two confidants as sharing a secret, lifting the hem of her skirt as she reveals a curved right calf, which dressed in a white stocking and a pick garter, rejecting the traditional constraints of female modesty. This playful and erotic scene was requested by a gentleman of the court who requested that Fragonard paint his mistress being pushed on a swing whilst he admired her from below. A similar painting from Fragonard called The Seesaw shows a young woman gleefully raising her arms and legs in the air. The women in the painting recline backwards and lift their arms above their heads and kick one leg up, revealing the area beneath their skirts. In the 18th century, audiences would have considered this kind of behaviour under ordinary circumstances. Outdoor spaces were less formal than domestic interiors. Grounds of private country estates and pleasure pavilions provided a retreat from the strict rules of elite society. French nobles could fashion themselves into carefree shepherds and milkmaids. Men and women could mingle more freely in hidden alcoves and on street corners. According to Smart History, Fragonard shows French elites playing in these spaces, juxtaposing natural and man-made elements. The fountains and trellis work on the right suggest efforts to manipulate nature. Overgrown plants and the abandoned rake underline the will of nature, which, like love, can never be fully constrained. And that's it for today's episode. I really hoped you enjoyed learning about this fruity, flirty style. It's weird, it's wonderful, and I love it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments and make sure you subscribe as I bring out new episodes every Tuesday. Goodbye.